Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the counselor's office. I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor, and today we have a review of Destiny 2 Season of the Wish's new dungeon. Technically, it's not attached to the season, but it has come out with the season, Warlord's Ruin. That's right. This you do have to pay. It is not part of the season. Again, if you buy the season, you do not get access to the Warlord's Ruin. You have to buy it on its own. You can buy it on its own, and you don't have to buy the season. Warlord's Ruin. As by the title, hold up, wait a minute. Either you're gonna like the video, you're gonna dislike the video, based on the title and maybe based on the thumbnail. Hold up. I'm gonna make a lot of people mad, and that's okay. On both sides, right? There's gonna be people that want me to rail this dungeon, and there's people that are like, oh, I can't believe you're railing this dungeon. It's so good. And you're right. I'm going to do both. I'm actually going to applaud this dungeon, but also I'm going to rail it because there's a lot that's wrong with it. But let's start with what's good with it, shall we? Let's go and talk about what Bungie did right. The theme of this dungeon is very simple. It's a castle. It has Dark Soul vibes, Dungeon and Dragon vibes. In fact, there's little, Easter eggs. First off, I swear, and it may be me, but when you die, it sounds like the Dark Souls sound effect, which is really cool. Fucking moron. Almost hopped down there. Paying attention. Oh, D&D? Well, there's mimics. Literally, the hidden chests are on rotations, and there's so many of them because a lot of them are mimics. That's awesome. The theme is dark, dungeony. It's really funny. A dungeon that actually is a dungeon. And it's awesome. The transversal of the dungeon itself is fun. It's unique in some aspects. There's even a jailbreak, which is fantastic. Now, I'm going to go through and talk about each encounter and then kind of give my thought on it. And then we can give like the deeper problems, right? I'll address the problems toward the end. I want to talk about what I like. So the first encounter, you have your right off the rip. No boring entrance. I mean, you are right into the fire. And that's awesome. I love that. There's actually 3 bosses in this dungeon, and that's fantastic. Less fluff, more fun. And this is probably one of the best boss encounters I have felt in a dungeon because it's quick, it's fast-paced, it's fluid. Meaning, as soon as you start and the damage phase ends, you're right back into the action. There's no waiting. There's no, man, I gotta do this and this. No, it is action, action, action all the way through. It felt like there was no real downtime. It was so fast, and I love that. The point of this is introducing the mechanic of what is known as Scorn, the Scorn Lanterns. I'm going to call them Scorn Lanterns. I don't know what else you would call them, Scorn Lanterns. And doing this extends or enables, in some cases, if you're doing solo, it's enabling a damage phase. The more of these you can activate, the longer the time. In this case, you could only get 2 that I know of, unless there's a different bar mechanic. You sit on the 2 lanterns that the boss summons, and that initiates DPS. But before you get there, you have to survive waves of enemies. And then during the process, it's all automatic, right? You're killing ads. Automatically, you get thrown into a little jail cell up above, and it slowly goes up. If you do not break out of your little jail cell, you die. So how do you get out? It's very simple. You kill the 3 taken eyes. You kill the blighted eyes, and you jump out before you die. Now, I know there's some cheeses where you can grapple and do all this stuff to kind of avoid dying. Kind of weird, but it is an option if you want to do that, if you have trouble killing eyes. Pretty cool mechanic. You jump in, jump out, go to the lanterns. On your left side, you have a debuff, or I don't know what you would call it, countdown, a timer, where you start losing your chance to activate these Scorn Lanterns. burning. It's something wish. As I'm reading this, or as I'm talking, I don't have a script. Boo, Mr. Gaming Counselor, boo. Whatever. Anyways, you do activate it. DPS starts very fast. It's all happening very quick. You do damage, and then you rinse and repeat. You're right back into waves of ads spawning. You kill them. You go into the cage. You get the lanterns. DPS. It's very fast. It is so clean how fast you get into the action. You have a bad damage round, that's fine. You could skip the damage round and it's over, and then immediately you're into the next rotation. It does not hurt you when you're going solo if you miss a rotation, because it's so fast. You're already back into the damage phase again. So kudos to Bungie. This is probably one of my favorite encounters in a dungeon ever. Even though it's small, it's not like grand. It is very fast and it fits my playstyle. Kill the boss. You go and do a actual prison break, and I don't know necessarily how people figure it out on their own. I played with people and I learned the process, but down on the ground there's supposed to be scratch marks by a skeleton, and depending on the orientation of the skeleton and the scratch marks is how many of the little gears around the prison you have to shoot clockwise and counterclockwise. Again, don't know how people randomly figured that out, but it's neat. It's cool. And you get two different kind of experiences. When you're with a group, you work as a group. Everyone's shut in their prison cell. If you're solo, pretty much you can go up and around the whole prison system. It's all open for you except for the main gate, which you still have to do the puzzle to get out, which is really cool that they actually changed the solo experience just a little bit, but it's still neat. After that, you proceed through the maze. There's a bunch of hidden doors that you use for quests, which we'll talk about, and I'm a little disappointed, but we'll talk about it. And it's neat there. So you've got hidden lore and dialogue attached to these doors. Then you progress, you get to the big boy, the ogre. I personally hate this encounter. Not because it's a bad encounter per se. Like, I've gotten used to it and I don't hate it nearly as much as I did at the beginning. I don't like this because it introduces a mechanic that you don't use ever again. In this mechanic, you have to do the torches again, right? You have scoring captains. They summon torches. You activate the torches. And then in the middle is dishes, little fire dishes. And there is fire charges, which you go toward the boss. There are 4 platforms that you light the torches using those fire charges. And when all 4 is activated, it starts DPS. The big thing here, though, is to initiate captains to spawn, you have to shoot blighted eyes that's scattered in the middle of the arena. You shoot them, it activates the captains. The captains spawn in. During this process, though, it introduces a new mechanic that's only used once, and it's probably the worst mechanic I've ever experienced, and I hate it. During this time that you are killing the captains or fighting the captains to try to activate lanterns, you get hit with frostburn, or a frost mechanic that if you get 10 stacks, you blow up and you die. There's no way of avoiding it except you go to the back along the rail. There are torches, or by any of the torches that you've lit up in the middle, you can use those too. But that's it. Those are the 2 ways of getting the stacks off you. It is so jarring to be, if you're going, and then suddenly you have to stop. It comes to a screeching halt. You have to stop to go to a torch, and then you can go back. It's really bad. And you don't use this in the final boss. Usually dungeons build upon each mechanics. They introduce small mechanics and it builds upon it. There's no building upon this. Like, it does nothing new that you will ever use in the final boss. So with that being said, the second encounter is a big drop for me, specifically because it takes much longer to get into the action. The rotation is too slow. It's a little disappointing. I'm going to be, especially if the fact that the first and final boss are both very fast. So then we have, once you activate all 4 torches, the last one you activate I would advise you stay and do DPS. It's very quick. It's very fast. You don't have a lot of time. Essentially, the ogre will walk over you while you're doing DPS. He'll slam down and turn off the torches. Then you need to move because he becomes immune. The torches standing in the warm allows you to do DPS, and you have 4 phases to do DPS. With a team, it's pretty easy to get him half and then 2 phase him. As solo, it depends on what class you are. It can be a struggle. Once you do enough DPS, he dies. He's dead. Good job. You did it. Nothing else really changes. You do a DPS rotation, you start all over again. But like I said, you have to kill the eyes, and then you have to fight captains and sit on the torches, and then you have to try to fight the freeze mechanic, which is what slows this encounter down the most. I hate that you have to kill the eyes to get the captain to spawn. That is also pretty bad, but it's bearable. You can kill them fairly quickly. It is just the freezing mechanic that really brings this encounter to a screeching halt, and it is not good, in my opinion. It really slows down the encounter for no reason. Once you beat that, you then continue on again. Again, this is another transversal, a lot of hopping around. It's pretty neat. Again, there's also hidden doors with different objectives that you can do later on. We'll talk about it. I'm trying to not dive into it right now. I'm talking about the things that I do like, though I did talk a little bit I don't like. So far, the overall, I like the bosses. I like the themes. It's pretty cool. Then we come to the final encounter. At first, I thought it was dumb to see reused bosses, like ogres, just to reuse Golgoroth to extend Golgoroth, or every other 30 ogres you can think of. It's pretty much the same, except the DPS mechanic, getting it activated, that's new. So I give it a pass, right? What dungeon doesn't reuse a boss, right? Or an enemy type? Like that's Destiny.ex. But the Chimera is fresh looking, and the encounter itself is very fresh. In fact, from the get-go, you start DPS, you are going to incorporate everything you learned in the dungeon, minus the snow. It has nothing to do with it. The freezing mechanic has nothing to do with it, which is stupid. But you essentially, there's waves of Taken. You kill the Taken. As you're fighting the Taken, here comes torches. You sit on the torches to either activate or extend your DPS. If you're solo, you're probably just looking to activate as much as you can and then get out of there. But then there is a new mechanic, which I think should have just been in the last part of the dungeon, but they're introducing it here for the final boss, where depending on how many people you have immune scorn that come in. You will have a hex that will count down. It's a debuff. And if it hits 0, you die. You kind of want to play hot potato, hit the scorn, pass it on to them, and then run away. And then when the countdown hits 0, they die, not you. It's whatever. It's not a hard mechanic. It's just paying attention and making sure you're managing your health, activating the scorn torches, making sure you're killing ads, because once the scorn die, not too much after that, DPS starts, and it's very quick. The boss will summon a bunch of blighted eyes, which does a lot of damage. The boss itself does a lot of void damage too, so you want, as a team, you could have well and all that, but if you're solo, you want to sit in the back. Very obvious. But it's a very short phase. But the neat thing about this is it is short phases, but if you have a bad DPS phase, it's not the biggest deal, because you are going to go it's a vertical DPS phase where you continue to climb up and up and up and up. You will have different platforms, but the rotations are exactly the same. Kill Taken, wizards, captains will spawn, activate torches, pass on the hex debuff to the immune scorn, they die, do DPS, until you get to the very, very top where you have the final rotation. There are 3 final rotations at the tippy top where there's no enemies, there's no torches. You just you have the boss in front and center with a bunch of eyes. You can shoot the eyes to extend your DPS during all this, by the way. And then you just do damage. And then platform will become taken-fied. You'll go to the next platform and then the next platform. And then whatever you've done, it resets. You go back to the very bottom. But again, the thing about it is the entire time you're going up is every time it's a DPS phase. So if you miss one, it's not that big of a deal. Instead of missing an entire DPS phase like you would normally in a dungeon, like if you have bad setup or you don't have your super, no big deal, because you are going to have time to build up super during these DPS phases, and they all add up. So it's really cool. I really like it. You can really optimize builds, swapping between things in between. Use your super, swap to something else. Use your super, swap to something else. Run out of ammo, swap to something else. Also, the boss is taken, so malfeasance, very spicy. Very spicy. Use your taken spec, all that. Optimal DPS. When you get the boss to the final chunk of its health, it goes into like a last stand. I do not personally know what happens if there's no countdown, so I don't know what happens if there is a time, or if you wipe if you don't do damage, but it gives you a chunk of health and you're teleported no matter where you're at to the top of the spire, and you do your last stand DPS. Again, I don't know if it's a true last stand, if you die or anything, but you face down the boss and you fight it. And once you kill the boss, you're teleported to the very beginning where you started of that encounter, and you get your loot. Again, I'm gonna say this encounter is very good. The first and third encounter of this dungeon is very fast, very quick. You get in the action. There is no real downtime, which is awesome. The second encounter is by far the worst encounter of this whole dungeon, and it's mostly because of the freeze and how it slows everything down. I like this dungeon. It is thematically the best dungeon I have ever played. I enjoy the lore. I enjoy even its Scorn, which is refreshing that we got some Scorn. We do have Taken, but seeing Scorn in more than just repeat Vex and Hive, Fallen. It's nice to see a different enemy type. Even though it's not new, we just don't see a lot of it. The dungeon itself, I would say, is a 10 out of 10. Even with the second boss being not my favorite, the boss fight itself is good. It's just the freeze that kills it for me. 10 out of 10. I really do enjoy this dungeon. It is probably my favorite dungeon of Destiny. Like top 1, top 2. Now you're probably wondering, what do I think? Like why am I saying it's shameful? Why does the thumbnail say shameful? Why is it 5 out of 10? Like where's that negativity come from? Because the best part of the dungeon, ironically, is the dungeon itself. Like most cases, you have dungeons that the best part is the armor or the weapons. In this case, the dungeon is the best part. We've had great loot and rewards. We had duality with some unique, awesome loot. Even Spire had some good loot, unique looking stuff, right? May not have been the best, but it was definitely unique. Ghost of the Deep, reused weapons, assets mostly. There's some new models, but the armor was probably the best armor that we've had in a very long time when it comes to dungeons. Ghost of the Deep was fantastic. It set a bar for armor. Then you have Warlord's Ruin. If it was not for the originality of the dungeon itself, I would tell you this dungeon is the dungeon of reused assets, at least in regard to the weapons. The weapons are just reskins of other weapons, and it really does rub me the wrong way when you pay specific content. Seasonal, I'll give you a pass because there's usually so many different guns and things in there. You're gonna get some unique stuff in there. You're gonna get your money's worth. Where this is on its own content, and it's just reused models. Not only is it reused models, it is horrible archetypes, minus the rocket sidearm, which I'm waiting on the verdict on whether it's good or not. I mean, it's cool, it's unique, but we got a caster frame sword, which you could already craft one from last season of the Deep, and it's very generic looking, not cool. You know, we have Warlord, we have castles. You think Dungeons and Dragons, Dark Souls. It is very generic looking loot. It is generic. It is boring. It is creatively bankrupt. We have a 140 sniper rifle. 140s suck, and this is no different. We have so many 140s. In fact, you want a good 140? Use Supremacy from The Last Wish. It's craftable and it has god rolls. You would never want to use, like, if you're going to pay for something, pay for The Last Wish and farm for that. You get a precision strand bow, which we have so many bows. I don't think it even matters. I'm going to be honest. I don't think it even matters unless you are a bow enthusiast, which I don't know what perks are on this bow that makes it really stand out. But if you're going to base this whole dungeon based off a bow, I don't know how you spend your money. I'm trying to think of any other weapons, but I think that's literally it. The weapons are reused. They're boring. They're not unique. And they're just horrible archetypes. Save, like I said, the rocket sidearm, but the verdict's still not out on that. The only saving grace of the loot is the unique sidearm, exotic sidearm, which is a crossbow, which I heard is bad in PvP, and the verdict is still being weighted on getting the catalyst and seeing if it's actually good in PvE. I don't know why we called it a sidearm. Why can't you just call it a crossbow? Because it's literally a crossbow. I don't understand. Just call it a one-off it's a crossbow. And the armor. Not only does this armor look so boring and bad, save a couple of pieces on different characters, it is undeniably bad. It looks like Europa Armor 2.0, though Europa Armor at least was a little bit more creative. This looks worse than some of the ritual armor that we've gotten from basic ritual playlists. You paid for this. And that's the sad part. Not only is the weapons disappointing, but the armor. The thing you do, the whole purpose of this dungeon is to get loot. The whole loot is boring and trash. And it's not even me. People are railing this dungeon on Twitter because of how lackluster this armor and loot is. What's even worse is that the Witcher armor set that you could pay for should have been the dungeon loot. Not only would have it gained more, favor from the community, it would have made this probably one of the best dungeons in the freaking game. If for loot as well, like the armor it fits so well. But of course, Bungie wants money. This was very outside of the dungeon. The loot is very lackluster. It's very generic. It is very boring. It is lazy. They did not put time or effort or thought into it. Literally the loot, you could take the loot and applied it to anything in the game. That's how generic it is. Nothing about the loot is like, oh, that matches this dungeon. It matches the theme. No, it's literally generic. And what's worse is once you beat this dungeon, you get a quest. That's right. And you have to go and collect shards, and you have to kill specific enemies, and they open up these dispelled doors, and you get Amakara bones, and they give you lore, and you have to go exploring the whole dungeon, and it is so cool. Until you realize that once you beat it, you get a random exotic. You do all that work for just a random exotic. This is what I'm telling you when I say that they put little to no thought in the loot in this dungeon. Everything, it's almost like two different teams worked on this dungeon. You have the people that created a theme, that created the dungeon itself, that created the story and lore. And then you have the people that literally made the loot for it, and they're like, I can't be bothered. And they just slap whatever in there. It is so shameful that such a good dungeon doesn't have loot, because what's going to happen is once people have gone flawless, once people have gotten the collector badge, once people have gotten the exotic, no one's going to touch this dungeon again. No one. Like, people are still farming duality for artifice armor, but also for the weapons. People are still farming Ghost of the Deep because of unique weapons, and for the armor. Prophecy, the weapons. If you want nice unique weapons, the rolls may not be unique, but the weapons themselves are unique. Is this worth $20, $15, whatever it is, Mr. Gaming Counselor? And I'm gonna do face cam for you. Here is my honest answer. Brutally honest. If you plan to just play for fun, yes, it is an experience. It is fun. It is so good. It is the best dungeon I have probably ever played. But if you are wanting loot, you are wanting something to chase, no. There are other weapons of similar archetypes. Granted, there's a strand precision bow. Like, ooh, strand, wow. If you don't care about getting every specific archetype, element, whatever, and you already have craftable gear, and you're like, you know, I already have a god roll this and this and this. I have a 140, like, supremacy god roll. I don't really care about the special rocket sidearm. You don't care about any of that, then no. The armor, you won't miss the armor sets. Like, it's not a must-have. I must have that set. No, you're not. If you want fun and you're only going for fun and you plan on playing constantly just for fun, it is a fun dungeon. Yes, it's worth your money. If you want loot, you want to know if you're getting your money's worth on loot with the dungeon, no. But that's my opinion. Let me know down below what you think. Again, I think most people in the community agree. Fantastic dungeon. The loot's bad. I hope and I pray, and I know it won't happen, but we can hope that if we as a community complain about the loot, that maybe, just maybe, just like the Prophecy dungeon, this dungeon will get a loot refresh. Even though it's new and right off the bat, if enough people complain about it and no one buys it, then maybe we'll get a loot refresh. At least maybe the armor. Maybe they'll actually put effort and give us some like Iron Banner armor or something. Like, I would have taken D1 Rise of Iron Banner armor, the flames. Like, I would have gladly taken that over the crap we got. That's it. I was trying to be as subjective as possible when explaining encounters, but obviously there's bias because it's me giving my opinion at the end of the day. But I was being subjective when it comes to the fun factor, and it's very fun. And yes, there may be some elitist points there because some people hated the last encounter. I love it. I love the fast pace, so maybe that's me being elitist. I'm sorry, but I'm giving you the actual, you know, some subjective. The community itself overall likes the dungeon. Just the loot is bad. And it's like as a collective. I would like to hear what you guys think. Let me know. Are you buying this dungeon? Did this, you know, honest review change your mind? I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor. Thank you for checking out the video for Warlord's Ruin. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe for the next video. Man, I'm doing a lot of Destiny. I hate you guys for this because this is all you subscribing and saying, I want some videos. I'm becoming a Destiny channel. And oh well, I think you're awesome. Love y'all. Peace.